I'm Elsa Atkin, Executive Director of the National Trust of New South Wales. Our job is to encourage people to conserve heritage. But I have never come across anybody who's taken things as far as the woman you're about to meet.
Our isolation means that we are the only people in an area which is the size of a small country in Europe. People often ask me why I began with Yerranderie, and even more people ask me why I continue fighting all the odds. And my only answer is, I like a challenge. Somebody says, you can't do something, and I say, I'll find a way. Yerranderie is an experiment, I suppose. It's taking an old ghost town with a lot of history and going right back into its Aboriginal history, exploring history, mining history, and trying to make it into something unique. I am an architect, and to me, long before it was trendy, I felt that we should all try to be self-sufficient. And here was one place where we could certainly carry that out.
For someone who wasn't exactly in their prime to come out here into the wilderness and then to look at this project and find the energy to restore this very isolated township where the nearest town is a 6-hour return journey to get any supplies, it's a mammoth undertaking. And for me personally, to have walked in here one lonely Sunday afternoon and found a grey-haired lady brushing up leaves in this immaculately conserved environment was an absolute shock to me.
The post office was still standing, but was very badly white-anted. So there was a lot of work to be done to just simply hold it together. What I did was cut it off at the foundations with a chainsaw and lift it up on car jacks and put new foundations underneath it. The tailor's shop was like a little shack. It had fallen right down into the ground, so we had to literally dig it out and start again. Slippery Norris's house was completely covered with blackberries. You couldn't even see it. And so we had to get rid of the blackberries and all the invasive weeds before we could start on anything. Mrs. Barnes' boarding house I didn't touch very much at all because I felt the fact it's over 100 years old, and I felt that it needed to retain that very special atmosphere that it has. This is a bit of living history. Mrs. Barnes' boarding house, and even the walls tell a story. Up here we've got packing cases on the inside of the big slabs to keep the drafts out, and quite a number of them were explosives. So we've got this one up the top, which is from Alfred Nobel, who of course was the one who had the Nobel Peace Prize.
The history of Yerranderie obviously goes back tens of thousands of years, and the almighty peak which literally dominates this landscape has told the geological story for 400 million years. And then more recently, if it hadn't been for the last tribal elder, Burragorang, out here digging holes, literally putting in fence posts, if he hadn't found the silver, that would never put this place on the map, as it were. He found the silver. That triggered off quite an impressive silver mining discovery. In fact, it was to be the richest silver discovery in Australia.
Yeah. Can you help me with the gold? I love the bush. I love the animals. I love most of all, I suppose, the people who come. The kids who come wide-eyed and tried something that they've never tried before, whether it's climbing a mountain or digging a piece of silver out of the roadway. It all looks silvery, doesn't it? But it's not. It's actually fool's gold. The mining began in the 1890s, and by 1907, it became a boom town. There were nearly 2,000 people living and working in Yerranderie. The men came back from the war in 1918-19 and continued mining, but all around the world the silver mines went into a decline. The mine owners kept them on for a while, but there were a lot of industrial strikes, and when Broken Hill went on strikes, our miners went on strike at the same time. And so it happened that in the end, 1929 there was a big strike, and 1930 was the Depression, and that put paid to the lot.
The town came and went, and its demise, of course, was quite simple. In the 1940s, Sydney was looking for a bigger water supply. They had to flood the Burragorang Valley and literally shifted everybody out of the valley. And it's also, at the same time, Yerranderie got cut off by the rising waters, and the people here that were remaining, that were hanging on to this quite primitive existence out here at Yerranderie, also had to leave, leaving the town literally high and dry in the 50s as a ghost town. And for 10 to 15 years, it was left to be virtually at the hands of termites, bushfires, white ants, and inevitable vandalism. If it wasn't for Val turning up in the early 60s with the dream not so much of starting the mining up again, but seeing the potential of this place, we wouldn't have it around today.
Yerranderie was, in the old days, 86 miles from the GPO. But the Water Board have cut the access consistently since 1959, and we are therefore isolated. The only road that they said we could use was the one coming from the west, which was Burragorang. And instead of 86 miles, it was 186 miles, which is 300 kilometres. And in order to get from Sydney to Yerranderie takes about 6 hours by road. And his girlfriend makes herself a beautiful cloak out of the skin of the burra, and she puts the feathers of the gang cockatoo around the collar.
She was brought up in the Depression and wasn't used to spending money unnecessarily, and it wasn't until she was in her midlife, in her 50s, that she came across Yerranderie and started to get involved, and really it took over. It became a complete passion for her, it became her baby, as it were. She didn't have babies, she didn't have a marriage. She was a miss determined to hook into a project and give everything to that project, and Yerranderie has literally taken her over.
Don't you drop him though, will you? Yerranderie is certainly a labour of love, and it costs me quite a lot of money to keep it here. I don't have any regrets about that. I really just love Yerranderie sufficiently and have great passion for it to be able to put my money into it. But that's not what's going to happen in the future. I'm fearful that when I go, the whole of Yerranderie will just fall to pieces. And that's very sad, having put so much effort into it. But as yet, I haven't got anyone to follow on. We have got a group of people which we have formed into a little association, the Yerranderie Education Association, and hopefully I intend to set up a trust, and they would be able to carry on. How many bits of rock have you found?
Millions. We got
Millions. People often look at me and say, you know, how old are you? How long are you going to last? And I don't really know. But certainly as long as I can, I will continue with Yerranderie. I started as a project on my own when I was nearly 50, and I remember my nephew saying to me that he hoped that the next 50 years would be as good as the last. Well, I can tell him that the next quarter of a century anyway is nearly over, and it's been very good looking after Yerranderie.
Oh, it's complete folly, yes. But she's left behind a significant piece of Australian heritage, which, if it had been left to its own devices, it would have been bulldozed into the dirt and trees would have grown up and no one would have been any the wiser.
This one goes straight down, and then the tunnel goes down like that.
In a generation's time, it would have been lost, but now I think it'll be preserved for generations.